Hello, everyone. Do you like how I just started that again now that we're recording? Hi, I'm Shauna Sue from Crooked Door Studio in Marysville, Ohio. I'm so excited to have you here tonight. Like I just said, we are recording, so the link will be available on YouTube. The video will be available on the studio's YouTube channel um, later tonight, sometime tomorrow, at some point. Okay, so you can look at it there. So, with that said, if there comes a point tonight that it's just not working out for you, and we all have those days, I have those days when I paint something and I'm like, what is happening? And it just doesn't feel right and I get frustrated. Don't worry about it. Put your brushes away, clean up, put all your stuff away, come back to the video later, right? There's no point in getting frustrated and angry and upset. Okay, you can always come back to this later. Painting should be, I think it should be relaxing. It should be fun. It can be a challenge sometimes, but if it gets too frustrating, it's time to stop. Okay. So before we get into painting, let's run through our supply list. I always like to do that to make sure that you have some version of what I have. You probably heard me say earlier, if you don't have some of the supplies that I listed out, don't worry about it. We'll wing it. Um, the only place that you might be concerned is if you have a different red than I do. I'm using bright red. If you have fire red, you might not want to use that. Okay. We'll talk about that when it comes to paint here in a minute. So red is the one place where you're going to have to use caution tonight because we're going to mix red and blue to get purple. If you have a red that's too orange and you try to mix it with blue, you'll get poop, not purple. That's not a good look for anybody. Okay. So let's run through our supplies. So first things first, I have an apron on. Make sure you have an apron or a paint shirt. The paint that I'm using, and probably the paint that you're using, is acrylic paint, water-based, water-soluble. If you get it on your clothes and it dries, it won't come out. It will if you really work at it, but we don't want to have that issue, right? So make sure you have a paint shirt on. At the same time, since you're painting at home, I'm painting at home too, check your surroundings. It's really easy with the brush to flick off the edge of your canvas. So check your surroundings, make sure you don't have anything super duper important that you could be concerned about getting paint on, getting little drops of paint on. Okay. So apron, paint shirt, check my surroundings. Canvas. The canvas that I have is a 16 by 20 stretched canvas. That just means it's stretched around and stapled on the back. I'm going to try to remember, and I'll try to remind you, if you're painting on a canvas like this, decide now if you're going to paint your edges. So we'll talk about how this painting is going to work here in a minute, but as we get to those outside edges, it looks nice if you do paint the edges. You don't have to if you don't want to, but if you start painting the edges, finish through painting them. Otherwise, it looks messy and unfinished if you don't. So canvas, I have a cup halfway full of cool or cold water, never warm or hot, always cool or cold. Brushes tonight. I have a big brush for my background, my big oval wash brush for my background, some kind of a medium brush, and a pointy brush for my trees. He doesn't look very pointy, but when I get him in the water, he'll go pointy. Okay. When I'm not using these, they live in the water cup. So I'm going to go ahead and take them, dump them in my water cup, leave them there. That's a good reminder that when I'm done with a brush, it goes back in the water cup with his friends. Okay. Paper towels to blot your brushes off on. I also have tonight a stack of clean paper towels. I think I'm going to use that for my tree leaves. I was trying to decide, am I going to use a brush and get messy, or am I going to crinkle up a clean paper towel and use that as like a stomper? Kind of like in the paper towel stomper idea. So grab some extra clean paper towels. Okay. I also have a paint pen. I keep one just in my paint bag, in my paint supplies. I usually use a paint pen to sign my paintings with because I'm really bad at signing with a brush. So I like to keep a paint pen for that. As I reach over here, I have our inspiration painting, our inspiration picture. So this is not my picture. Ooh. This is not my picture, right? Ooh. This is just something for inspiration that we found online that we really liked, and we decided this is what we're going to do. So let's talk a little bit about how this is going to work. We're going to paint our background first. I always like to give you an idea of the direction that we're going to head in. So we're going to start with our bright spot in the sky where the sun is. We're going to do a lot of white and a little bit of yellow. And then I might transition into some red. Mixing the yellow with the red will give me a little bit of orange, which I think will be lovely. And then I'll start to add some blue back there. This is my base coat. This is not, it's not my tree leaves. It's just what's going to be behind everything. So if my tree leaves don't cover a spot, I'll have color back there. Okay. Then we'll put the ground on, right? A nice blue ground. Then we'll go back and put our sun in. Then we'll put some trees, some shadows of our trees, the shadows that they're casting. And then we'll finish up with our leaves. So that's kind of how this is going to work tonight. So let's talk about paint before we get started. This is what my paint palette looks like tonight. A lot of white. We always use a lot of white, right? A little bit of yellow. That's probably way too much yellow. It's just going to take a tiny, tiny bit. Red. We've already talked a little bit about the red. So the red that I have, and if you got red from me, it's what you have, is bright red. We need to use caution in a painting like this because there's purple in the background. We're going to mix red and blue to get purple. If you have the wrong red, if you have a red that has too much orange in it and you mix it with blue, you're going to get a poo color. Okay. So if you're not sure that your red and blue are going to mix nicely, you might take this chance right now, take this opportunity to pull them together just a little bit and do a little tiny mix to see if you can get the right shade, the right purple. I shouldn't say the right purple. There's no wrong purple, but make sure you get purple and not poo. Okay. If you don't get purple when you mix those together, if you get a yucky color when you mix them together, we won't mix them together, right? Instead of letting your blue and red play together in the background, you will very distinctly use red to get more of a pink and then separately blue. You won't mix them together, okay? And then black. So that's what my paint palette looks like tonight. So I'm going to give y'all a minute to make sure you've got everything you need to get this started. Make sure you've got a beverage. You've got your music turned up. You'll see me looking to the side a lot. It's because I have you on my laptop, so I can monitor over there, and I'm monitoring the chat over there. So I have everyone muted. It cuts down on a lot of electronic feedback on my end if everyone's muted. I'll give you the chance at the end to unmute yourselves and talk a little if you want. But if you have a question, just pop it in the chat box and I'll try to keep an eye on it. Okay? All right, let's do this. Are you ready? Here we go. So decide now, whatever it is that you're painting on. This painting is vertical, I think. It's a portrait painting. Are you going to stay portrait? Are you going to flip it sideways and go landscape? That's up to you. It's your painting. Think about where you're going to put it when it's all done and what space you have that will accommodate this painting when it's completed. If you have a spot on a bookshelf that will accommodate landscape, then that's what you'll do. I think this painting works well either way. I'm going to stay portrait. I'm going to stay vertical because that's the way the original was done. And I'm going to try to stick with that to show you. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but I'm going to try and stick with that. Okay. So again, let's talk about how this is going to work. We're going to work in the sky first. Then we're going to put our ground in. We're going to go back and get our sun. Then our trees. Our shadows. And then all of our fun leaves over top. Okay? So the first thing we need to do is identify our horizon line. If we look at the original, it's a little bit lower than halfway. I might take mine even just a little bit lower. So probably about 2/3 sky and maybe 1/3 ground, something like that. So find your biggest brush. Let's get started. Biggest brush. I'm going to tap, tap, tap that guy in the water cup, soften him up a little bit. If you have new brushes, you're going to want to do this to get the starch out of them. I'm doing this because it's an old brush and I need to soften him up a little. All right, dry him off with the paper towel. And let's see. I think my horizon line is going to land right about here. We're going to have to do some imagining here for a minute. I think I'm going to have my horizon line here. So 2/3 up is sky, 1/3 down is ground. With that said, I think I'm going to put my sun right in here. So think about where you want your sun to be, because that's where I'm going to start with white and a tiny bit of yellow. I want to get those background colors in there first. Now, anytime you take paint, we always go in the edge of the puddle, never the middle of the puddle, okay? So I'm going to take a big old chunk of white, a lot of white, and a tiny, tiny bit of yellow, just a little bit, not much at all. And I want to start behind where my sun is going to be. So about there's my horizon line. My sun is going to be right in here. So I'm going to start with that nice bright yellow spot where my sun is going to go. And then I'm going to build out from there. Okay. My brush stroke here doesn't really matter a whole heck of a lot because this is all going to be in the background. This is just, so don't spend a lot of time fretting with it. This is just in case some of our leaves don't cover. In case we can see through those leaves, you'll have color back there. Okay, so white, tiny bit of yellow. Then again, I'm going to radiate out from there. I'm going to go straight into some red. Not going to rinse my brush out. I have white and yellow in my brush. I'm going to go straight to red. This is going to give me like a pinky orangey color. Oh, that's pretty. Maybe a little more white. I got really intense really fast. Look how messy that is. That's fun though, right? Go back and add a little more white. And then from there, I'm going to go into blue and maybe a little bit of white. Again, not spending a lot of time worrying about it. This is going to all be in the background. So blue, a little bit of white. Just getting that background color in there. The thing to remember here is acrylic paint blends while it's wet. Once it's dry, it will not blend. So you can get back in there in that pink and play a little bit and get a little bit of a purple blend. Or you don't have to. Again, we're not going to see much of this when it's all said and done. But a painting like this, it's all about layers. So we have to start with that very basic first layer. Oh, and we talked about painting our edges, right? Now's the time to decide. Are you going to paint those edges? I think I might. So as I get out to that edge, the color I have on my brush, I'm going to wrap it on around and paint my sides. This is always the part of the painting where I'm like, ooh, is this going the right direction? It's going the right direction. We don't judge things this early in the game, right? So again, keep in mind where your horizon line is. So I've got about 2/3 sky and about 1/3 ground. Okay. This is my reminder to you to breathe. Everybody let it out, right? This part of the painting, you really can't mess up. Again, this is all in the background. I'm gonna make sure and get over here and get my edges. And by this point, I have pretty much just blue and white left on my brush. I don't have much of anything else left on there, right? My pinky purple is gone. I mean, it's still in there if I look way down by the bezel. But my bristles are just showing blue and white. And I bring that up because that's good. That's what I want to finish out my ground, to put my ground on there, blue and white. Oh, I love looking over, seeing how everybody's doing. Looks good. I see him. This is the romper room portion of the evening. I see Lori, and I see Emily, and I see Aletha, and I see Amanda, and I see Kim, and Lynn. Lynn's back. Yay! And Andrea, and Baby Yoda. And I think we've identified now why when we do this, people leave their cameras off, because I'll call on you. But that's okay. So we'll take another couple minutes, get that sky on there, get those edges. And then our next step is going to be to put that ground in there. So you see I'm still holding my brush because I've got a good mix of color happening in there. Oh, oh, Jessica and Kelly, you guys are here too. Yay! Oh, so we didn't get to paint last week. Um, we didn't get to paint because we had a mask auction on Halloween. That was a lot of fun. And that's what you just reminded me of, Kelly. Um, that was it was a lot of fun. We had artists create masks, and then all those masks were auctioned off, and 100% of the money raised went to United Way. And once all the figures were counted, we raised about $2,000. Yeah, the mask auction was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Um, so yeah, we raised about $2,000 for United Way. So, and then let's see, we're here tonight. Won't be here next week. I'm taking vacation next week. Um, I'll be down in Hocking Hills hanging out at a cabin in the middle of nowhere with no Facebook, with no news. It's going to be glorious. But then we'll be back November 21st. And I know a lot of you have seen that painting that we're going to do. It's going to be good. It is the cutest little gnome, little Christmas gnome. So that should be a lot of fun. So anyway, okay, let's put the ground on there, shall we? Blue, some blue, lot of white, and we're just going to go side to side. And by the time we're done with this step, our whole canvas will be covered, right? So side to side with some blue and some white. As you do this, think about where your bright spot is, and it's going to cast some light. It's going to be lighter below where your sun is. So I'm going to get my blue and white on here. I'm going to get a little darker at the edges, I think. You can play with this and have a lot of fun. I'm going to get darker at the edges, and I want to try to get lighter right here underneath where my sun is going to go. My sunlight, I should say. Okay. But essentially blue and white side to side, finishing out this canvas. You see how I'm going around the edges first with that dark blue, and then I'm going to start adding white as I get closer to my sunlight spot. Those edges. There we go, blue and white. Get a little brighter right here at the horizon line. And I might have to let it dry because that blue is so powerful. That blue is so powerful. It's really hard. Oh, sweet pea. I'm glad you're here tonight. That blue just takes over. So I'm probably going to let it dry a little bit and then get a little bit of fresh white right there underneath. Okay, so again, when we're done with this step, our whole canvas is going to be covered and we're going to start to layer on top. Next, we're going to go into some white and yellow to get a nice bright sun in there. And then we're going to work on the trees, the shadows for the trees, and then start layering leaves. Okay, so how about it is 7:25? How about, or 7:27, I guess it is. How about 20 till? How's that sound? That'll give this some time to dry. It'll give us time to get clean water, clean brushes, because we want some clean yellow and white when we move into that sun. So how about 20 till? So 7:40, we'll move on. Yep, and that'll give my ground a little time to dry so I can get a little more white on there. And this is probably our only drying break tonight, I think. Yep, 7:40, we'll move on. Oh. It's so funny, painting and not being with people, like physically in the same room. I just had somebody message and ask me to slow down. You're spot on. Sorry about that. Got a little excited, and when I paint by myself, I paint really freaking fast, really, really fast. And I usually paint like 4 or 5 paintings at the same time. So I can just move from one to the next. But when I'm in the studio painting with people, I can feel the pace of the room. That's hard to do when I'm here by myself and you're out there. So thank you for letting me know I was moving too fast. I am slowing down now. So in about 10-ish minutes, I'll check in and see how we're doing. You can let me know if you're ready to move on or if we need to take another 5 minutes. But about 10 minutes, I'll check back in. Again, right now, I'm just giving this time to dry. My whole canvas is covered, right? This is all just in the background. And I think that's part of the reason I moved fast too, is because I know in the end, a lot of this isn't going to matter. It's all in the background, right? We're going to layer stuff over top of it. So in about 10 minutes, I'll check in to see if we're ready to move on. In the meantime, you could get clean water, because we're going to get that yellow-white sun in there, and we're going to want our white to be nice and clean. So a nice clean brush. I think mine is partially dry down here, so I'm going to try to get a little more white right there underneath where my sun is casting light. Bright spot right there. Okay. That's better. Got that nice bright spot where my sun is casting light. So if you're new tonight, I know we have some new faces joining us tonight. I made a deal earlier about making sure to never ever dip your brush in the middle of your puddle of paint, always in the edge. So you can see in my white, because I've used out of the edge of it, I still have a clean edge over here. So when I'm ready to take some yellow and white for my sun, I have this clean spot right here that I can get nice fresh white. That's why I always use in the edge. So I always have clean, fresh paint that I can just keep moving on around. In about 8 minutes, I'll check in, see how we're feeling, see if we need more time. So I need to check in. Emily, what'd you have for dinner? I always have to know. I always have to know what you're having. I had a giant chef salad. It was so good. Oh, just taking a lot of time to type. Hi, Anita. Hi, honey. I just saw you joined us. Oh my God. Homemade pasta. Oh, spaghetti with fresh sauce. Oh, that sounds really good. You know what? I think you posted a picture of it on social media now that I think about it. Looked really good. Oh, tomatoes from there is nothing better than garden fresh tomatoes. There are few things better, I should say. There are few things better than garden fresh tomatoes. I have two ripening in my window, and now that I look at them, Anita, I'm recording, so you'll be able to look at it, watch it later on YouTube. I'm looking over at my two tomatoes in the window, the last two. They're looking good. I will probably have those last two tomatoes um, as a what it's called something. Is it a poor man sandwich? I saw it on a menu somewhere. A poor man sandwich, I think is what it was called. But it's toast. Oh goodness, Anita. Are you okay? You have to let us know if you're okay. Um, but yeah, toast, mayo, tomatoes, salt and pepper. So I think that's where my last two garden tomatoes are going tomorrow. Gonna have some sandwiches. Well, Anita, I'm glad you're here tonight. Oh, goodness. Whiplash is no good. I'm sorry, honey, but I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're okay. So about another 5 minutes and I'll check in and see how we're doing. And I always remind you guys to breathe. I'm actually taking a moment to remember to breathe myself. It's nice to see you too, honey. Oh, Lynn, egg roll in a bowl. What is that? Is it literally just like an egg roll in a bowl, or is it like a thing? She's trying to explain it. We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about your egg roll in a bowl later. Oh, so I know sometimes it's hard for people to join on Saturdays. So I wanted to let you know we're having, you need to mark the date. And now I'm trying to think of the date. It's a Thursday. I think it's the first Thursday in December. We're having a virtual paint party fundraiser for the Union County Humane Society. So I'm pretty excited about that. I think it's the first Thursday in December. So it's going to be a cat dog theme. I found some really cute paintings. We're gonna vote on them. I'm gonna put them up on social media on Crooked Door so we can vote. So you can let me know which ones you like, and the one with the most votes is the one we'll do. So that'll be a Thursday chance on time on a Thursday to paint. That'll be fun. And again, nothing next Saturday. But then November 21st will be our next one here. Let's see, about 3 more minutes and I'll check in. You can give me thumbs up, thumbs down if you're ready in about 2 minutes. Oh, I'm so happy Baby Yoda has joined us tonight. Baby Yoda's busy. Baby Yoda's got the new show is happening right now. And if you haven't seen it, it's so good. The one from last night was adorable. Or no, was it last night? I don't know. I watched the episode 2 last night. Adorable. Just, it's like when you think Baby Yoda can't get any cuter, it happens. True. So true. And if you've seen the second episode, you know what I mean, because it's adorable. Okay, so how are we feeling? It's about 20 till. Give me like a thumbs down if you're like, wave your arms frantically if you're not ready. Jessica. I think I think you and Kelly, I think you guys are ready. Okay. All right, I'm seeing thumbs ups. Okay, perfect. And again, thanks for letting me know I was moving too fast. I appreciate that. Because again, it's hard for me to tell here by myself, here physically in my house by myself. But I've got you guys with me. You just have to let me know. Okay. So I'm going to take a moment and check and see if this is dry. I want to make sure the spot where I'm going to put my sun is dry. It's going to go right in the middle of that bright spot. So let's flip that canvas around, make sure we don't have any chunks of wet paint there. Right? Looks like my only wet paint is out here at the edges and down here at the bottom. And you see, I flip it around because I can see where it's shiny. That's where it's still wet. And it's dry right there. And that's what I want. I want it to be dry right there. Okay. So I'm going to take my medium brush, clean it out, dry it off. Make sure it's nice and clean. You don't want any blue paint water in there. You want to make sure it's nice. It's going to be nice and bright. So I'm going to take some clean white over here in this edge with my medium brush, some clean white, and the teeniest bit of yellow, teeny tiny. And let's put our sun back in there, right in that bright spot, right in that bright yellow. Now I'm going to do more to it later, but I want to have some place that my rays of light will emanate from. And I know because of the lighting here, it's hard to tell what I've done, but I'm putting just a nice bright white spot right there for my sun. Okay, white. There's a tiny bit of yellow in there. If I say bigger than a quarter, about the size of a 50-cent piece, not quite golf ball, that's about the size I'm going for. Again, it's that bright spot that when I get those trees in there at the very end, we're going to lay in, maybe not the very end, but we're going to lay in those rays of sunshine. And I need to know where they're coming from, right? So I'm using my white and a tiny bit of yellow to get that sun in there so I know where those rays are going to come from. Okay. And I need to stop touching it because it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Okay, so we'll take a few minutes. Have everybody get their sun in there. And then our trees are going to be next. So I'll give it a couple minutes and then we'll talk trees. Oh yeah, Journey. So she had the blow dryer on, so didn't hear what I said. So with my medium brush, right in the middle of that bright spot, I took white and a tiny bit of yellow and just put a circle in there. It's not quite as big as a golf ball. It's bigger than a quarter. Just that nice bright spot for my sun. That's all we did, was just put so a lot of white, teeny bit of yellow. You're welcome, honey. And another minute and we'll move on. We're gonna put you know what? We're gonna put our trees in next. So let's look and see how wet the bottom part of your canvas is. If you have a lot of wet paint down there, you might blow dry, because if we're going to put black trees in, and if you have a ton of wet white paint, it's going to make your trees gray, right? And I think we want our trees to be pretty dark. So let's take an extra couple minutes if we need to blow dry that. Mine's a little wet and I'm okay with that. It's not so much that it's going to turn my trees light gray. Might turn them a little, but not bad. That black's pretty powerful. So let's take an extra couple minutes and make sure that's dry before we start to layer those trees in there. Okay. And I'm going to go refill my water cup. So a couple minutes, we'll move on to trees. Okay. So let's check and make sure that that ground is pretty dry. Okay. We're going to get ready and put our trees on there. Let's talk about this before we do it. So we have different levels of trees. The trees that are back that start on the horizon line, and I know it's hard to see on this, they're really, really skinny, right? So we're going to use the fine brush. We're going to use our small round brush, and we're going to put some trees back on the horizon that start right on our horizon. All of these trees are just straight sticks. There really are no branches to them. Now, as we start trees further down on the canvas, they get a little bigger because they're closer to us. They're closer to the viewer. So like this guy that starts all the way down here at the bottom, he's a lot bigger than everybody else because he's closer to us. So think of the bottom of the canvas in perspective is closer to the viewer. Okay. So I'm going to start with these guys at the horizon line with black, with my small round brush with black. And then I'm going to move down the canvas and start to put some others in, little bigger, and then this big guy. Okay. They start and they just go all the way up and off the top. We'll camouflage the tops of them with our paper towel, with our crinkled up paper towel and our leaves. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to count here real quick. So what do we have? Back at the horizon line, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like maybe 4 right there around my sun. In my sunny spot, I should say. It's about 4 there. Then there's 3 over here. 1, 2, and then these 2 big guys. It's funny when you count the trees, it looks like a lot more than there actually are because of the shadows. There's a lot of vertical lines because the shadows are creating those lines too. We're not going to worry about the shadows right now. We're just going to paint those trees. Now my trees back here, these 4 that are back really close to my sun, none of them go through my sun. The one goes right beside it, but none of them paint through that white sun I just put on there. And I want to thin that black paint way, way, way down. By thinning it down, it'll help my trees, it'll help my paint go further across the canvas. And it'll also make my paint a little more transparent. And by having those trees along the horizon line, by having them a little more transparent, they're not going to be these harsh black lines. they're going to be a little more see-through, a little more forgiving, I think. So pointy brush, find your round brush, clean it out, dry it off, and then take a drip of water on that brush at the edge of your black, and we want to thin that, thin that paint down. Got it thin enough it's dripping. I'm using a drip of water, little bit of paint, squishing it around, getting it thin. Testing it by dragging it across my plate. That's pretty good. Might even thin it down a little more. So for these first couple trees, I'm looking for the consistency of ink. The consistency of ink more than paint, okay? Now be careful when you get ready to put these trees in here. The paint we're using is so thin, but you want to make sure you don't have any water drips up here on your bezel. You want to make sure this part of your brush is dry, because you don't want to start that tree on there and then have it drip on down the canvas. Okay. So again, 4 right in this vicinity, not dragging any across my sun. So horizon line, up and off. Whew. It's intense, right? Again, making sure we don't have any drips that are going to run down the canvas. Looks like that could happen. So have a paper towel ready so you don't get a dripper. So let's see, there's 1, 2, and 3. This one didn't even touch the horizon. Let's fix that. And let's see. 4. Where's 4 going to go? 4 is going to go right here. We started down, little down past the horizon, just a little. So do you see none of them are super straight? They're different widths apart. Just like nature, right? So now let's keep going with trees. Again, the ones at the horizon, the paint is thinner. They're smaller, skinnier. As we move down the canvas, our trees are going to get, the paint is going to get a little heavier, and the trees are going to get a little thicker. So I'm going to do a couple more trees in this vicinity with my pointy brush, and then I'm going to move to my medium brush. So a little more paint, a little less water. So to accomplish that, I'm just dragging over a little bit of paint over in that thin spot, that thin water spot. Let's see. I'm keeping in mind, I'm going to have this big tree right here and a bigger medium-ish tree right here. Let's see. 1. There. Give him feet. I've got one that's a little bit bigger, a little further down. And then that leaves room for my big guy. I'm gonna have a big guy over here, but I have 3 closer to that right side. So I'm gonna put those in, again, with my small brush still, and then I'm gonna transition to my medium brush for my 2 big trees. And again, this is just black. They're just black lines right now. There's a clump of 3 on this side. It's funny, it looks like they're just like plopped there, right? They're not really growing out of the ground, but that's okay. We're gonna use a little bit of dark blue, maybe a little purple with our paper towel, and we're gonna get a little bit of shadow underneath them. Once we get a little bit of shadow underneath them in a little bit, that'll help set them down. But right now it kind of looks like they're floating. So if your trees look like they're floating, you've done the right thing. Okay. So again, I'm getting rid of my pointy brush. I'm going to move to my medium brush, and I'm going to put my my smaller big tree here that's just to the right side of my sun. And then I'm going to have my biggest tree that starts down here in this corner. So even though I'm using my medium brush because I want it to be bigger, still going to use that medium brush skinny ways. If I use it fat ways, I'm afraid my tree will get too fat too fast. So I'm going to use it skinny ways and then just build it a little bit at a time. So medium brush with black, and I want this one to land just to the right side of my sun. This is one of those paintings you can play with. You can have a lot of fun with it. You can, once you get your trees in there, you can go in and work on some highlights if you want. And by highlights, I mean a light gray. If I were going to do highlights, which I don't know that I'm going to do, I might, we'll see. But your highlights are going to be coming from the sun. So all of your trees on the right side of your sun, they're going to have light on the left of them. And all the trees to the left of your sun, the highlight's going to be on the right of them. Again, I don't know that that's something I'm going to do, but if you wanted to play and do that, you could. I'll get my trees in there, and then maybe I'll take a minute and show you that. But let's get the trees in there first. So now it's time for my biggest tree down here. Come on, big guy. Whew. Okay. Okay, so keep working on your trees. We're going to do our shadows next, but I want to give you time to get your trees in there. You can see for each one of my trees, I came back and I splayed the bottom out just a little bit to give it the idea of roots. Again, I'll camouflage those with a little bit of shading when we get ready to put all the leaves in the top. So right now it looks like they're just stuck in the ground, but we'll fix the bottoms of them later. But spread them out just a little bit. And I talked a minute ago about highlights. Again, you don't have to do this. This is totally optional. Keep working on your trees if you want. But since I'm moving fast tonight, I can show you, since I've got time, I can show you how I would do highlights. So not white. White is too much. I'm going to start with a medium gray, and then I can always go lighter if I want. So again, all of my trees that are on the right side of my sun, if you're going to do highlights, the highlights have to be on the left. So I've got just a light gray, and I'm just going to drag down that black. It's so subtle. You can go lighter if you want to, but I'm going to start with a medium gray so it doesn't look like snow stuck on the side of my tree. Okay, I'm going to add a little more white. Again, I'm just playing because we've got the time. I like the way that looks. Little highlight there. Again, not white, just gray. There we go. So we'll take another couple minutes. Get those trees in there. Remember to breathe. They're just black lines, right? And then we'll get ready and put our shadows in. These colors make me happy. Super happy. Okay, couple more minutes. Make sure you can get your trees in there. And I'm intentionally slowing down now because I want to make sure my trees have plenty of time to dry before I start to put leaves on. Not doing leaves yet, but I'm going to want them to be dry before I do that. So we can slow down now. We'll work on those shadows next. So how about 2 minutes? 2 minutes and we'll do some shadow talk. Okay. Let's talk about those shadows before we put them on there. So think about how shadows work, right? The sun is hitting the tree, and the shadow is the absence of light. So I'm going to have you take your brush. I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use my medium brush, but I think I'm going to use it skinny ways. I'm going to take that brush and clean it out, dry it off. So I have a clean brush right now, and I'm going to think about how my light works, right? So everything, my shadows are going to emanate from my sun. So if I'm thinking about adding a shadow to this tree, to this very first tree right here, I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to put the point in the middle of the sun and put the other end of my brush, I'm going to have it land right at the bottom of that tree. And that's the way it's going to cast my shadow. So it's going to cast my shadow this way. I almost need something longer. Stand by. Let me grab a ruler real quick. Ooh, I found one of my long brushes. Okay, so from the center of the sun, line it up with the bottom of your tree, and that's the direction my shadow is going to go. My shadow is going to follow this line. Same thing over here, center of my sun to the bottom of this tree. It's going to cast my shadow this way. That means the further over to this side that I get, it's going to cast my shadow on this guy. He's not going to pull down. He's going to pull sideways like this. My trees on the right side of my sun, they're going to cast shadows to the right. So again, from the center of my sun to the bottom of this tree, my shadow down here is going to go just a little to the right. That's the easiest way for me to know what I'm doing, is to take something and lay it down, lay a straight edge down, and that helps me know which direction to go. Okay. So now my shadows are going to be just a little bit darker than the color of your ground. So our ground was blue and white. So I'm going to use blue and white, but I'm going to go just a little bit darker, just a little more blue. So let's start with this guy here, right? Keeping in mind where I want his shadow to go. Blue and some white. And I'm going just a little bit darker than the color of my ground. And even though I'm using my medium brush, I'm going to use it skinny ways. And I have to get over in front here so I don't mess this up. Okay. So he's going to cast a shadow. Like that. Oh. So let's make sure all those trees have shadows. I'm starting with my ones at my horizon line. I'm using very little paint. I'm almost dry brushing it. Very, very, very little paint. And you see every time I'm going back to the center of that sun and I'm imagining where that line is going to go. It's like it's coming straight from the sun. So again, blue and white, just a little bit darker than the ground. It's funny, this is one of those instances where I'm looking at the picture and I'm like, I don't know. But then I look at a photo of my painting and I like it. I really like it. So this is my reminder or my advice to you. If you're not sure your painting's headed in the right direction, take a picture of it on your phone and then don't look at your painting. Look at your phone. Look at the picture on your phone. Your phone will pump up the contrast and you'll see it differently on your smartphone than you see in real life. It's the weirdest thing. But I'll do that if I'm not sure a painting is going the right way. I see it differently on my phone. So now I have my shadows for all my trees on the left, my trees on the right. Remember, the shadow emanates from the sun. So the ones on the right, their shadows are going to kind of start to head to the right. Kind of, sort of. Not drastically, but just enough. And this is my reminders, everyone breathing. We do new things and sometimes it gets tough, right? Because we're out of our comfort zone. But that's how we grow, right? Oh, the shadows are spectacular, aren't they? A world difference to our painting. And I want to get nice and close on my shadows so you can see they really are kind of messy, right? The lines are broken and there is nothing precise about those, right? They're messy over here. But when you get away from it, when you step back, it all makes sense. So this is my reminder to you to be kind to yourself, right? You're sitting super duper close to your painting right now. step back away from it, and it'll all make sense. Okay. So keep working on those shadows. The beauty of this is if you have a shadow that's gone kind of haywire, we're just using the color we've used in the ground before, right? Add a little bit of white to get it back to that original ground color, shush it back in, and try again. Okay. So we'll take another couple minutes on those shadows. Again, all the while giving our trees another couple minutes to dry, because when we put those leaves on there, what we don't want to happen, we don't want to start tap, tap, tapping with the paper towel and pick up some wet black paint from our trees. Okay. So a couple more minutes on those shadows. And then we're going to come back. And I think we're going to do some shading underneath the trees. And then we're going to get into our leaves up here. So it's 8:17. How about 8:20? Be ready with clean paper towels and blue, white, and red for leaves on your trees. Okay. So 3 minutes, 8:20. We'll come back together and we'll get our next layer on there. Okay, another minute. Oh, good night, Anita. Looks like Anita had to leave. Okay. So let's take a look so we have our shadows on there. I'm going to flip my canvas again and look and make sure my trees are dry. Okay. Because again, I don't want to drag through any wet black. Oops, little spot there. It looks like my canvas is pretty dry. So let's see. Let's try to think of how we want to do this, because everything's good and dry right now. I think the first thing I want to do is put my rays of sunlight. Oh, if your trees aren't dry. Do we need to take 5 minutes maybe and make sure the trees are dry? How about let's take, somebody just asked, what do I do if my trees aren't dry? Let's take 5 minutes. Yeah, let's take 5 minutes and make sure the trees are dry. So this is your opportunity to go to the blow dryer if you need to, pick up a paper plate and start drying it, because we do want your trees to be dry. Okay. If I'm trying to get my trees to dry, something I'll do is hold my painting and look for if I have like a roll of paint that's not dry. Like I found one over here. I smoothed that out so it would dry a little bit faster. Okay. But yeah, let's take 5 minutes. We got plenty of time. And make sure those trees are good and dry. So blow dryer time if you need to. And I'm going to take a moment while the trees are drying and go let my bulldog out. So about 3-4 minutes, 3-4 minutes. We'll be back and we'll start on leaves and shading underneath the trees. Okay. Hey, sweet pea. Oh, bye bye. Hey, sweet pea. Come on. Oh, bye bye. Come on, big girl. Oh, it's nice. We gotta go outside. Come on, big girl. Here you go. Good job. Okay, keep going. Keep going. There. Well done. Well done. That's my big. That's my big dirt. Okay. I think we're ready. Okay, here we go. Let's do a little bit of shading at the base of our trees. This is going to help set our trees down a little bit, because mine still look like they're floating just a little bit. But you see there's these dark areas underneath these trees. we're going to use a tiny, 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 tiny bit of paint, kind of dry brush and scribble. Find your medium brush, clean it out and dry it off. And it looks like in the original, it's a real dark purple. So I'm going to take a little bit of blue and a little bit of red. And that's going to give me this really lovely deep plum color. And I'm not going to use very much paint at all. I'm actually going to, once I have purple on there, I'm going to take and go swipe, swipe on my paper towel to wipe it off. Just 1, 2. So I have, and my brush almost looks clean. There's not much on there. But then down at the base, right at the base of my tree, with that little bit of dark paint, I'm going to scribble, scribble, scribble. Scribble, scribble, scribble. If you listen, you can hear it, right? The scratching. But by me putting that dark right at the base of my tree, it helps sit it down and it helps it not look like it's floating. So like this guy right here, he looks like he's floating. I have that tiniest bit of purple on there. And I'm going to scribble, scribble, scribble. And by putting that little bit of dark under there, sets him down. So I'm going to do that underneath all my trees. So a tiny bit of blue, tiny bit of red, wipe it off, and scribble, scribble, scribble right underneath. And just that little action sets them down. And if you look at the original, some of these trees, it's not just right under them. It actually spreads out a little bit. Like this guy over here at the bottom right. Like that. It's a simple thing, but it's so important. All my scribbling too is very parallel to the bottom, very side to side. Starts heavier at the base of my tree and then kind of tapers off as I move down. So the most solid part of my scribble is at the base of my tree, and then I run out of paint as I scribble downward. And I keep looking at it thinking what I could change. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm going to put that brush in my water cup. And then here in a couple minutes, our next step is going to be to put some sun rays, some white dry brushing from our sun. And then we're going to use our crumpled paper towel and work on our trees, work on our leaves. And that's how we're going to finish this up. So for our next step here in a couple minutes, make sure you have clean medium brush, clean white paint, and a stack of paper towels. So clean medium brush, clean white paint, stack of paper towels for your tree leaves. So I have my medium brush, cleaning it out, making sure I've got all the paint out of it. I think I'm going to go wash my medium brush out because I want my rays of sunlight to be nice and clean and white. And I've got dirty paint water in this brush, and that's going to change the color of my white rays of light. So I'm going to go rinse this out, and then we'll come back and we'll put our rays of light in and then start working on our tree leaves, okay? Okay, rays of light, clean medium brush. I have my medium brush, and again, I'm going to use it skinny ways. And I'm going to use the tiny, tiny, tiniest bit of white paint. I'm going to take some white paint. I'm going to start with white. You could add a little bit of yellow if you want, but I like the idea of those nice bright white rays of light. So medium brush, nice and clean. I'm going to take just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of white paint. And to make sure, that's way too much. To make sure it's a tiny, tiny bit, I want to dry brush it. I'm going to wipe it off. And I always do this on my hand. I know this seems weird, but I do it on my hand because then I can see how much paint I have on my brush. I can't tell if I wipe it off, if I wipe white off on a white paper towel. But if I wipe white off on the back of my hand, then I know exactly how much paint I have on there. So you can see I don't have hardly any white on there at all. But I'm going to use that tiny bit of white dry brush, and I'm going to come out from my sun. Do you see? It's so super subtle, but you can start to see those rays of light coming out. So each time I'm going to take a little bit of white, I'm going to wipe it off, and using my brush skinny ways, I'm coming out from the middle of my sun. This is going to take some time. This is something we have to build up to. If you get frustrated and you add more paint and you move too fast, you've lost the look. Remember, some of these rays of light are going to be longer. Some are going to be shorter. But they all emanate from the middle of your sun. It's funny, I keep loading my brush back up with the paint that's on my hand. This is another one of those times that if you were here, you could hear my brush on my canvas. The sound of that dry brush scraping against the canvas. It's what happens when you don't have much paint on your brush, right? Now I'm just using white. You could add a little yellow if you want. I think I'm going to stick with white. So I just keep going around and around with my dry brush with that tiny, tiny, tiny bit of white. See, it's very subtle. Very, very subtle. It's funny, isn't it? I make a big deal about not getting paint on your clothes, and then the first thing I say is, that's okay, just wipe your brush on your hand. Acrylic paint, water-based, water-soluble, it will wash off of your body. You'll have to scrub a little, but it will wash off your body. Acrylic paint, when it dries, it essentially turns to plastic. And that makes it really hard to get out of clothing. That's why we try not to get it on our clothes. Okay. I have done so much of that dry brushing. It's really hard now to see the edge of my white sun, that real light, bright sun that I put on there. It's hard to see the edge of it because I have dry brushed so much around the edge. It has really softened the edges of my sun. I think I'm going to stop before I go too far. Okay. This painting is really lovely the way it is. I'm like, how much am I going to do in the leaves? I'm not sure. We'll see. But the leaves are where we're going next. And the leaves are really whatever you want them to be. My guidance is to use the color that's already there in the background. Okay. So I'm going to start with some leaves that are going to be like way off in the distance in these trees that are way far back. And I'm going to start with purple. I'm going to take my paper towel and crumple it up. And I'm going to use some red, blue, and a little bit of white. And I'm going to do that, probably not, I know I just patted down here, but probably not a lot down here. I'm going to try to keep it up and around this area where I have purple in the background. And then blue and white where I have blue and white in the background. Okay. And I'm going to stay away from this lovely bright sunshine that I just put in. So let's do this. Let's get in there and play, shall we? Paper towel. I'm going to fold it in half this way. There are a million ways to do this. This is just the way I do it. And then crinkle into the middle. And that gives me just a nice, lovely stomper to work with. You can really wad it up however you want. There's no right or wrong. That's just the way I do it, because it gives me a lovely little stomper pad. So what did we say? The leaves are, and don't completely destroy your trees that are back there. You want to be able to, you want to have heavier spots and lighter spots, but you want to be able to see some of your trees, some of your main trunks back in there. So I'm going to take a little bit of blue with my stomper and a little bit of red. Just getting a lovely purple here. Maybe a little bit of white. Going for the color that I already have back there. Okay. And my leaves are going to be more dense around the outside edges. So I'm not going to start right here in the middle. That's going to be too aggressive. I've got some purple up here, so I'm going to start closer to the edge. And then work my way down a little bit to the sun. Because if I start out closer to the edge, the paint's going to be heavier and thicker, and it's going to trail off and get a little less as I get closer to the sun. So I don't have a big blob right there close to my sunshine. I'm going to carefully work my way down there. So again, purple for me first, purple right in here around my sunshine. And then I'm going to transition into blue around the edges. Remember, heavier in some spots, lighter in others. You don't want to lose your trees completely. This is the best part of the painting, isn't it? This is the messy part. So I'm getting purple right around there, and then I'm going to transition. I'm going to get another paper towel here in a minute and transition into blue and white. But I want to get my purple back in there first. Ooh, some purple down here. Okay. Oops, some purple down here. Okay. So I've got my purple. I'm going to go to another paper towel. And this is just going to be blue, blue, and white. And if we look at the original, you can almost imagine branches, right? There's like a branch here and a branch here, branch up there. I see the same thing happening over on the other side. So I'm going to try to imitate that. I'm going to try to imagine that there are branches there. So blue and clean white. And for this tree right here, I can imagine there's a branch that hangs down that way. Maybe one that comes over this way. And then maybe another heavier. Right? We can kind of play and imagine branches that kind of swoop down and hang off that tree. So a lot of blue, little bit of white. Now up to this point, my leaves have all been from the horizon up on my two, well, I shouldn't say my two biggest trees, but this big tree, it's going to have leaves that come down past the horizon line a little. That's going to help add some depth to our painting. And I'm going to do the same thing to this tree over here on the far right. I think there's about the only places that I'm going to come down past the horizon line with leaves. And remember, as we do this, there's going to come a point that you're going to have to stop because you're going to turn it into it's all going to turn into the same color and you're going to have done too much, right? So keep that in mind. There's a time to stop. Not there yet, but I'm getting close on this left side. Okay. Over to the right side. Go in with my dark blue on the edge. Oh, this is fun. This is messy. Messy is good. Remember, every now and then, rearrange your paper towel. If you use it too much, if you have too much paint in it, it'll start to deteriorate and you'll start to leave little bits of paper towel on your canvas. Not a bad thing. Just make sure painting mixed media then, right? Multimedia. Let's Okay, I'm getting close to the point of doing too much. So I think I'm going to get ready and call it here. So something we've not talked about as we continue to paint and finish this painting up tonight, something we've not talked about is when we're all done, please take a picture of yourself with your painting, a nice selfie, and send it to me. Send it to private message it to Crooked Door Studio on Facebook. You can email it to me as well. But then all the paintings that I've received tonight, I will collage them together and put them together in a group photo. And I'll push it out on social media, because if we were all together at the studio, we would get together and have a group photo at the end. But since we're all separately in our own safe spaces, that's a way we can still have a group photo from our class here tonight. So I think I have reached the end. I think I dare not do any more. I have some lovely sections of heavier paint. If I do too much, it's going to all turn into one blob of one color, and that's not what I want. So I think I'm going to stop. Something you could do if you're not sure if you have worked into one blob of color, let it dry a little bit, go back with a clean, fresh paper towel and a little bit of white. And you can see I kind of did that. And I got little white highlights on top of some of those branches. That'll help if this is all turned into one big mass of blobby paint. Go back with a little bit of white and give yourself just little bits of highlight right along the tops of some of those branches. But I think with that, I'm going to call this done. Yep, I'm going to call this done. So paint all over my hands. So one of the very last things you want to do, you can keep painting, keep playing. I won't collage our pictures together and send them out until probably morning. So as long as I have it by morning. One of the last things you want to do is sign your painting. I like to sign mine usually bottom left or bottom right. That's where my paint pen comes in handy. Stretched canvases are lovely because you can sign on the sides. You can sign on the back if you want. If you sign on the back with a paint pen or a Sharpie, never here, always out here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and call this done, and then I'll stop the recording, and then I'll give you the opportunity to unmute yourself if you want. Go ahead and sign mine down here in the corner. SS, blah, blah. A little tick and a 20. There we go. I'm calling it. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. This has been a lot of fun. This makes winter almost worth it if we could have winter that looked like that, right? Love it. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm going to go ahead and end our recording. If you want to access this, it will be up on YouTube, hopefully later tonight or first thing in the morning. Okay, thanks guys.